Hello everybody, this is Mithril Zenith, and welcome to another tier list. Today I'm going to be tiering the classes in Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. I'm going to generalize this to Fire Emblem Game Boy Advanced, but these are all the Sacred Stones classes. This is where I'm focusing on because Sacred Stones has more classes than the other games. I think there's some give and take here, but yeah. Anyway, the idea is not necessarily to tier all of the different units. The idea is to tier the unit classes in general. So this is taking average unit class strengths and weaknesses. This is taking average, like, one unit to another unit if they were, say, controlled by the AI. The AI is randomly generated units with these classes, class bases, class tendencies. Specific units are going to break these rules, but class tendencies, generalities, this is what this is all about. Here we go. So, as a note, sometimes there are some gender differences between stat caps. I'm not really going to be talking about those. Sometimes there are some, like I said, any sort of unit by unit differences I'm not really going to be engaging with or talking with. This is going to be about the classes themselves. If you had to randomly draw a unit and you got a random unit from a class, you know, how would you feel about it? What can they do? What can they not do? So let's start this and also, I guess by starting this, I want to say that how am I tiering tier 1 versus tier 2 units and tier 0 for recruits and trainees? I'm gonna say that tier 1 units are tiered relative to other tier 1 units. Tier 2 units are tiered relative to other tier 2 units. I'm not going to say these units are tiered, like, otherwise, why would Cavalier be better than Paladin? I'm not saying I think that, but why would a Cavalier be better than a Paladin? Or, you know, what have you. I think it's only reasonable to tier units relative to other units of their, you know, of their tier, I guess. But I'm not splitting it up into separate tier lists because that's, I don't know. I found this tier list. I didn't make this tier list. Oh, I found this tier maker. I didn't make this tier maker. Anyway, I'm beleaguering the point. Let's get on with this. So what is... I think these are all alphabetically sorted. Archers... how low can I afford to put archers? You have a bow... so you don't have any melee range, which means you inherently don't have much enemy phase. You can do some good stuff with bows. Archers really depend on what game you're playing, because FE7 and FE9, we're not tiering FE9, but like FE7, you have double effectiveness on bows against flying units. FE6 and FE8, you have triple effectiveness. That does a lot for bows. Also, Fire Emblem 6, you're going to want archers more than Fire Emblem 7 or 8 because bows have naturally so much of a higher hit rate compared to other 1 to 2 range weapons in FE6 compared to FE7 and FE8. Same thing with Shadow Dragon. Archers are better in Shadow Dragon because the accuracy of bows actually matters. I think for, in general, Fire Emblem GBA, I'm probably going to have them D or E tier just because, like, they're fine. Maybe I'm just going to put them in D tier. I don't know if I'm going to use E or F tiers. I just threw them in here. Archers are fine, but I don't think they're really great. I don't think you're really going to notice when you have them. Assassins, let's just do all the tier 1 units first, and then we'll add in the tier 2 units. Cavaliers have to be S tier. I think it's funny they used Amelia in all the Cavalier pictures here, but whatever. Cavaliers have to be S tier. They're just that good. They have 2 different weapon types, which I'm trying to think of another tier 1 unit that has 2 different weapon types, both swords and lances. They have 7 move, which is more than any other tier 1 unit outside of Pegasus Knights and Wyvern Riders. They have solid stats across the board. They're not really weak in anything, even if they're not super strong in anything. Like, their lowest stat on average is going to be what? Skill? Magic and resistance? I mean, magic isn't split, and like resistance, everything's low on resistance. What's your point? Speed? Maybe they're a little bit low on speed, but they're not super low. 2 weapon types, best movement, Only weakness is they're vulnerable to horse slaying weapons, so horse slayers, halberdiers, and longsword / zanbato. Are those really gonna come up? Like, they do every once in a while, but they're pretty rare. S tier unit. Slightly affected more by terrain, but yeah. Is a dancer a tier 1 unit? I think a dancer has to be an S tier unit just because the ability to refresh is so good no matter who it's on. They provide access to so many other strategies. Their combat stats do not matter. The fact that I have to ask, is a dancer a tier 1 or tier 2 unit? And I still think the end result is going to be the same. They're going to be S tier, even though they can't fight at all. Dancers are at least as good as the units around them. So if you have at least one really good unit, a dancer is really good. Enough said, dancers can even allow that unit to be even better than 2 of the same unit because of the extra strategic advantage of moving the same unit multiple times versus just having 2 units that move once. Cleric. This depends as well on the map. I think clerics are fine. I don't think clerics are that impressive. They're 5 move, foot unit. They use staffs. I think in general you're not really happy to have a cleric, but you're happy to have a cleric. You don't really need more than 1. Rare circumstances if you're splitting up clerics. Yeah. And I think priest is going to be the same. I'm not counting what they promote into because this is just what use they have here. It's like I'm debating putting them down in like E tier because I think depending on situation, an archer might actually be more useful than having a cleric. We'll see. We'll see where everything else stacks up, and then I'll probably shift stuff around. I'm not tiering lords right now. I think lords are, again, lords are 1 unit thing, and they're too specific. Fighters. Good old fighters. Do I put them in B tier or C tier? Fighters are fine. Good HP, good strength, reasonable speed and skill, defense. I think they kind of suffer when it comes to weapon type, speed, and accuracy. I mean, axes are generally a really good weapon type, but with low skill and speed naturally, axes can weigh them down, especially if you're in like FE6. So fighters, they can struggle a bit. Do they struggle that badly, though? Because like I said, axes are just generally a good weapon type. They just have some inherent issues with being too mediocre. And the things they're good at don't matter as much with the things they're bad at. Fighters, for instance, like I said, they have high hit points, but relatively low defense. So those high hit points don't really mean a lot. Which we'll get to more when we talk about knights. Journeyman. If we tier him with potential, great. If not, Journeyman's like an F tier. I think I'll just talk about all the trainee classes. I think that's kind of how they stack up, because, yeah, potential-wise, they can grow into other units, they can get a lot more experience, they can do all this stuff. If you just have one, and that's all you got, they have 4 move, no good stats. The only reason Pupil is better than Journeyman and Recruit is that Magic is a lot easier to use and a lot better to use, being natural 1-2 range with good accuracy and hitting on resistance instead of defense. Low stats don't matter as much with Magic than they do with axes and lances, so, you have it there. 4 move, horrible base stats. As a class, they're just not good. They can become great units elsewise, but as a class, no. Pirate. Everything you loved about Fighter, but able to walk on water. Also better speed and skill? At the cost of... I mean, you tell me what that's at the cost of. I don't think there's really a cost to Pirate. I think Pirate is just that good. I think Pirate is amazing. Where's Bandit? There's not Bandit here. I would argue Bandit is just below Pirate, but probably still A tier, because Bandits have Mountain Walk. If you have playable Mountain Walk, that is so good. Where's Gonzalez? I mean, everyone loves a playable Bandit with Mountain Walk. Everyone is sad, I'm sure, that Bandits don't have Mountain Walk in later games that you get Bandits at. Awakening, Three Houses. Give me mountains and let me walk over them, please. Give me peaks and let me walk over peaks. I need it. Pirates are great. Bandits are great. I'm gonna say bandits are here with pirates. End of story. A tier unit. Fantastic. Axes are a fine unit, fine weapon type, and they don't struggle with the low speed and skill that fighters have. Fighters are just worse. Bandits... Okay. Brigands are different. Brigands are a bit different because they have much higher strength and much lower skill. And I think that might take Brigands just to B tier, but they're probably above fighters. I wish they had a Brigand on this. Yeah. Not going to tier Manakete because that's on a unit by unit basis. We can talk about the difference of Manaketes later. Mages... Mages are good. Mages are just good. Good all around to have. I'm debating scooting units around because I think this is gonna get very crowded towards the A tier. 5 move, magic, natural 1-2 range, good accuracy, hits on resistance. Again, the reason why Pupil is E tier instead of F tier. Good stats, little low hit points and defense, but good everything else. Mages are fine. Shaman's probably right there with mages, and monks as well. I don't necessarily see a huge difference between them. Monk might generally be B tier because combination lower magic and lower base damage on their tomes in return for, what, higher skill, higher speed, higher accuracy on tomes anyway. Okay, so you're gonna hit more often, which you generally are gonna hit if you're using magic anyway. I'll talk about this. There's a weird balance when it comes to units where it seems like Fire Emblem is trying to do something where it's like, axe units are the strength units, sword units are the speed units, lance units are the accuracy units. It feels like they're trying to do that, to double down on things and double down on the weapon triangle. But what actually ends up happening is that axes are the strength units with high damage, sometimes have accuracy struggles. Sword units are the speed units, but also the accuracy units, and lance units are just fantastic overall, or terrible overall. We'll talk about that later. As such, I think that they try to do something similar with mages, where it's like you have shamans, which are slower and more powerful, a little bit more sturdy, but lower speed. You have mages, which have higher skill, but still have good magic attack and just lower defense. Then you have monks, which have maybe the defense, maybe the durability. They don't really have the durability, and they don't really have the speed. Like, they kind of have the speed, and they have the skill. I don't know. Monks are weird. I think monks are generally worse than these other two, except for in Sacred Stones, where monks can promote into bishops and get Slayer, but that's a different topic. I think that's a sub-game. I think in general, because of Dark Tomes, Anima Tomes, Light Tomes, their interaction, I think monks are probably B tier and the others are A tier, but it's close. It's real close. Any other tier 1 units? Myrmidons, I want to put you higher, but sword locked, foot locked, 5 move, 1 range lock. You double down on speed and accuracy, and you don't usually have the strength, and so you rely on crits to kill, but then you're using up high-level equipment, which could let anyone crit, because your stats aren't quite at the point that you can naturally crit on your own, because you don't have like a crit bonus or anything. They're better than archers, because at least they have general enemy phase, because generally most units are melee, more units are melee than ranged, but they're still not great. I think mercenaries are probably just the better version of myrmidons, because they generally have higher everything except for skill and speed. And even then, like, their skill and speed are not bad. They're still really good. But they have better strength, better defense, similar if not better hit points. Slightly lower skill and speed, but Myrmidon skill and speed is overkill. Mercenary is where it's at. Still only B tier because Swordlock, but, you know, that gets fixed when we promote. Pegasus Knights have to be S tier as well. I think, you know, you give up swords on a Cavalier, as well as some stats in almost every way except for skill and speed, for the ability to fly. And flying utility is huge. It is amazing what you can do with a flyer. There are occasional moments in actual Fire Emblem 7 where not promoting a Pegasus Knight is better than promoting one, because you want to be able to carry Hector around with an unpromoted Florina. It's weird, it's a super niche, but it exists. Yeah, Pegasus Knight's easy S tier. Phantoms don't exist. They're F tier. They have 1 hit point. Phantoms are the Shedinja of units, except they're weird. I don't count Phantom as a real unit. Anything else outside of... Okay, Thief? Thief really depends, because Thief can be like an A tier unit because of all the abilities they can have to steal stuff. Open chests, open doors. They contribute in a non-combat way. And they still have great speed, and so they're not terrible in combat. They're just like a bad Myrmidon. But if you don't have anything to do with them, then they're a bad Myrmidon. If it's only combat you're rating, they're a bad Myrmidon. But if you take into account all of their other things they can do, doors, chests, stealing items, and you have uses for them, then they're A tier. You don't even necessarily care about promoting your thieves, because they can still do their stuff unpromoted most of the time. Solid unit all around. Okay. Do I put Knights at E tier? I think I'd put Armor Knights at E tier. Okay, so here's the problem. Here's the problem with Armor Knights. What is the cost of defense? Because defense by far is the best return on investment stat in the game. Because if you have enough defense, you literally become unkillable. Doesn't matter how slowly you play the map, doesn't matter what you're fighting, if you have enough defense, you will win. Hands down. So what is the cost of defense? The Armor Knight says the cost of defense is everything else. Reasonable hit points, reasonable strength, maybe reasonable skill. Maybe. Worse speed in the game. Worse movement in the game. Worse movement than the trainees because it also gets the same movement penalties that Cavaliers get. 3 cost for 1 thicket. No resistance. Like, you thought, like, a fighter had no resistance? At least fighter had, like, Armor Knights have no resistance. They can kind of fight, but they're gonna get outsped, they're never gonna dodge, they're gonna get absolutely killed if they get hit by anything, and so the question is, well, you know, they have high defense, so they're not gonna get killed, right? Not quite. Effective weapons are everywhere for killing Armor Knights. Having no speed means you get doubled by anything, and so if anything can hit through your defense, or especially hits through your resistance, you're gonna die. Armor Knight's a bad unit. Armor Unit is a horrible unit class. I get the idea, because like I said, defense is fantastic. I get why you wanted to restrict the defense unit in some way. But did you really have to go this far? Did you really have to cripple them in absolutely everything else? I don't know. I think they went too far. But that's all the tier 1 units we're going to talk about. Actually, no. Because we have Wyvern Riders, which are the best units. Because, hey, it's a Pegasus Knight, but with strength and defense. It doesn't have high resistance. It doesn't have quite overkill speed and skill. But it has strength and defense and hit points on a flying unit. And it's still not, like, horrible speed either. It's not Armor Knight slow. It's like a fighter slow, which is not that slow. This is my unpromoted unit tier list. Now let's add in the promoted units and make things real crazy. Assassins? Compared to other promoted units, I mean, it depends. Are we talking about Fire Emblem 6 and 7, where assassins can't steal? Are we talking about Fire Emblem 8, where they can? Oh yeah, Fire Emblem 6, where assassins don't exist. Fire Emblem 7, where they can't steal. And Fire Emblem 8, where they can still steal and use lockpicks. If they can still steal and use lockpicks, they're just as good as a thief. If not, they're struggling a little bit. It sounds weird to promote a unit and go down a tier, but compared to the other tier 2 units, assassins are just kind of not that good. They still have good utility, they're still good in solo combat. I might even put them down into like C tier. I don't think assassins are that good, assuming they can't still steal and lockpick. If they can, they're like a B tier. Maybe they're A tier if they can. But yeah. Okay, yeah, if they can do all the things a thief can do, then they're still A tier because they're just a better thief. But other than that, I think they're probably C tier. I think compared to the other tier 2 units, they're not that great. Snipers. How much are better stats worth to you? Because snipers have real good stats, but they're still bow locked. Only 6 movement. Fantastic skill, usually great speed, usually pretty decent strength too. But I think they're probably still D tier. Bishops. Okay. Sacred Stone's bishops are S tier because Slayer is fantastic. Ordinarily a bishop's like a C tier. Light magic, not that great light magic though. Staff use, great staff use. Depends on your staff use. Also, hold on. I missed an unpromoted unit. Let's take these away for a second. Troubadours. At the very least 1 tier higher, if not 2 tiers higher, than your footstaves. Purely because they have a mount. Depending on the game, they might have 6 movement, they might have 7. You know, they might have full horse utility, they might not. But just getting on a mount, getting that extra movement, getting that horse utility, puts them up at least 1 tier, if not 2. Fantastic. Anyway, you're C tier. You're probably C tier on average. Be quiet, Edelgard. I'm trying to tier units here. Oh, thank you. Berserkers. Are Berserkers S tier? I'm definitely going to put Berserkers at least A tier. Because they have all the benefits of a bandit and a pirate, ocean walk and mountain walk, while also having good skill, generally, good speed, good stats all around. What is the weakness of a Berserker? Can someone let me know? I think their only weakness is that they're limited to Axe as a single weapon type, but Axe isn't even a bad weapon type. I think they're great. I can't take this song. I need to skip that one. That is distracting me too much. Axes are great. Yeah, sure, they're a little limiting, but if you're in a game with Sword Slayers, you don't need anything else. They have 1-2 range, best 1-2 range with, like, tomahawks. Okay, second best, spears are better. A tier unit, easily. Debating putting them into S tier, but I'm not 100% on that. Yeah, I'm never unhappy to have a Berserker, and I'm usually always scared to fight a Berserker. Maybe I am putting him in S tier. It just feels odd to put him in S tier. Druids. I think Druids are also A tier because they have all the magic, power, defense, hit points, little on the slow side, but not super slow, and staff use. Perfect package. Just like a Sage. Where's the Sage? Summoner, Swordmaster, Sage. Yeah. Depending on which one of these is better, that's actually a tough choice because I think Sage... probably gets the worst of the bunch because I'd rather have Dark and Anima than have Anima and Light. But I still think Sage is A tier. I still think Sage is really good. Falconite, obviously high tier, though beaten out by Wyvern Knight and Wyvern Lord. I think that those are just... Oh, did I misplace those? Probably did. The question is the Wyvern Knight better than a Wyvern Lord? Because Pierce versus sword use. I think Wyvern Lord is better personally. They're all S tier units, but I think sword use and slightly better stats beat out Pierce. Although Pierce as a whole can unlock alternate strategies, but I find Pierce is generally unreliable, and so I don't really count on it. And Wyvern Lords are generally strong enough to kill whatever you want to kill anyway. They're all still S tier units, but I just wanted to say that. Generals. I will say the extra weapons they can use, using all 3 weapons, does put them a tier above their counterpart. Great Shield as well in Sacred Stones might bump them up to C tier, but it feels weird putting generals right alongside assassins and bishops, but maybe I'm gonna do that. If you have Great Shield, and access to all the weapon types, I think a general is C tier. Because they patch up some of the weaknesses that Armor Knights have, because they have actual strength, they have actual skill. They still don't have speed, they still have bad movement, but they have good other stats, and I think that is good enough to put them up to C tier. I can maybe talk about like the super recruits. I think super recruit pupil is like a B tier. I think staff use is better than getting access to all 3 tiers of magic. I think super recruit super pupil is B tier because staves are better than access to all 3 tiers of magic, all 3 types of magic when you're not going to use all 3 types. Super recruit is very fun to use. It's like a swordmaster but with lances. C tier, maybe B tier, just because lances are better unit, better type. Still struggles with strength due to its caps. Just mediocre caps all the way. And Super Recruit Journeyman is like B or C tier because it's a berserker without all the nice things of a berserker. You just get the extra crit. It's pointless. It's not worth it. Paladin. How can I make a tier list and not put Paladin in S tier? In Fire Emblem 6 and 7, they can use all 3 weapon types. In Fire Emblem 8, they can still only use swords and lances, but that's still good enough. 8 move is the best move in the game. They have no weaknesses stat-wise. They're not, like, insanely high. They have lower stat caps than any other specialized unit, but their stat caps are good enough that they can really do anything they want just fine. They even have good resistance, which not all units can say. What's the weakness of a paladin again? Did someone answer this question? Halberds? Maybe? Not really? Terrain? We'll slow them down a little bit. Paladins are great. Mounted utility? Great Knights. Great Knights. Do I put them above or below generals? That is a tricky one, because on one hand, extra point of movement, mounted utility, still get access to all the weapon types, still have basically the same stats. In all the meaningful ways, at least. On the other hand, no Great Shield. And so the one thing you want a general to do, which is sit there and take it, generals just do better, and Great Knights make themselves vulnerable to 2 tiers of classes of effective weaponry in both anti-armor and anti-cavalry weaponry. Which, sure, there's still not a lot of, but there's enough of it every once in a while. So I think Great Knight's probably still C tier. Whether it's better or worse than General is... yeah, it's give or take. General is stronger and better at its one job. Great Knight can do a little bit of some other jobs at the cost of being more vulnerable. Rogue. Rogue is basically a thief that doesn't require lockpick. you know, it only exists in Sacred Stone, so I'm only allowed to tier it in Sacred Stone's category. Rogue is A tier. Because if you still need Thief utility, Rogue's your man. And those higher speed caps mean you're never going to be outsped by anything else. You can steal anything if your game needs a higher speed to steal. Swordmaster, the 15% crit bonus or 30% in Fire Emblem 6 puts them up a tier over Myrmidon. I think that they're that good, pure combat-wise, pure stat-wise. I think the problem is that you're still sword-locked, and swords are not the best weapon type in Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem. This song is almost done. Okay. It just off-key so much, and it just bothers me. Whatever. I'm not going to complain too much of that. Low Fire Emblem is great. Listen to it. Link in the description below. Heroes are better Swordmasters in most ways. They don't have the extra crit, they don't have the overkill speed, everything else they have, and they have axe access. I guess, yeah, the question is, do you want sword access? Or do you want higher stat caps and a crit bonus between Hero and Berserker? I think in that case, Berserker has to go up a tier. Either that or everyone else needs to go down a tier. It feels odd putting Berserker right next to the same tier as all the high movement units, Paladins, Falconites, Wyvern Lords. Feels odd. I'm gonna do it. Mage Knight. You have mounted utility. You have Anima and Staves, so Valkyrie, Light and Staves. Not bad, but I think you're still only 6 movement. Maybe you have 7. Hard to say. I think that I generally like having a Sage or a Druid better than a Mage Knight, which is weird to say, considering how good Mage Knights are. It's odd. It feels odd to say that, but I feel like that's how it is, and I can't really put a finger on it, but I'd put them in A tier still. I think they're still good, but I think they're probably lower than these two, despite everything to the contrary. They should be so much higher, but I feel like they're so comparable, it really is just a matter of, do you want slightly more movement at the cost of slightly more other stats? So comparable. Ranger. Do I put Ranger in A tier? I think I'd probably leave Ranger in B tier, because compared to all the other tier 2s, they're not quite as good. They have sword access, they have bow access. The two weapons that, one, both perfectly cover each other's weaknesses, no 2 range versus no 1 range, but also don't have 1 to 2 range access, a weapon that is both 1 and 2 range. And their stats are fine, they're pretty good, they're not overwhelmingly better than anyone else's in any way. They're solid units, but I think I have to give them a solid B tier because they're not that impressive. Summoners. Summoners are good. The utility that Phantoms provide, even though a Phantom by itself is an F tier unit, the utility it provides by being able to have free units, free throwaway units, to lure out enemies, to trap enemies, to deal some extra damage. They can fly, they can hover, they can do anything. They can be a wall for like 1 hit point, 1 attack. They can do so much. And summoners still have staff access, still have dark magic. Dark magic kind of sucks in Fire Emblem 8. Dark magic is amazing in Fire Emblem 6 and 7, so if they were to exist with those dark magic spells, they'd be even better. Summoners are great. I like summoners. I think, yeah. And then Warriors, I think I'm going to throw into B tier because I think that Berserkers are just so much better than Warriors, it's not even funny. And Heroes are better than Warriors too, which is odd to say considering it's like you normally just use them with axes anyway. But it feels like the balance of stats Heroes have are just better than Warriors' stats. I feel like Warriors just are lacking in that skill category just enough to put them down. Hard to really say for sure though. Do I feel good about this? Not really. Not really. I feel like Berserker needs to be lower, but I feel like Berserker has to be the top of the A tier. But if Berserker's in the A tier, but putting Berserker on the same tier as... Okay, Rogue, I'm not considering this. Putting Berserker on the same tier as Hero that is a tough call to make. How do I feel about the unpromoted units? Do I still feel that way? Yeah. Maybe I think Rogue is B tier. How then Thief has to be B tier. Because Rogue is just Thief. But I think Rogue, because the other tier 2 classes are so much better in combat than Rogue is, that they definitely deserve their higher tier placement. That, not that utility is bad by any means, but it starts to mean, the difference in combat effectiveness starts to mean more, I guess. Maybe I'll put it that way. Yeah, I think that's going to be the tier list as I leave it. If we assume, okay, these are still the basic trainees, not the super recruits. Yeah, tiering across, not tiering within, or tiering within a unit grouping, a unit tier. I think this is probably where it ends up. Yeah, I'm not super upset by any of these. Again, I'm still not super happy. I don't know whether I want to put Berserker in A or S tier. It is definitely top of A tier, but I don't think it's quite S tier with these other units. But yeah, if you have thoughts about unit classes, leave them in the comments below. Again, these are unit classes, not units within the classes. Just generalized statement. For example, if you got a randomizer and all your units were randomized into these classes, how would you feel about them? Leave your comments down below, like and sub to the channel if you want more stuff. If you want me to do tier lists of other unit classes, I could do like Shadow Dragon, I could do GBA, I could do NES, I could do any of them. Maybe not Fates, because I don't have quite as much experience with Fates as I do other things. But yeah, leave your comments down below, let me know how you feel, and until next time, this is Mythos Zenith signing out.